This is the Tabernacle podcast with me, Britton Bishop. Today I am joined by returning guest, and today she is co-host Victoria Hughes. Victoria, what's up? How we doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. It is disgusting outside. It is officially the time of year where it's like, so why are we here?
It's actually very British weather outside.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Isn't it like this like year round though?
9 months, I'd say.
Is that why you guys
average.
eat those peas on the fries? It's just pure response to depression.
Just keep going.
I sent a picture of them. I don't know, American people listening to this. There's this thing that they eat at
Mushy
sporting
peas.
event. It looks disgusting.
It's mushy peas.
It's like peas made into gravy put on top of fries.
No.
That's what it looks like.
Well, they're called marrow fat peas, but they're
and
mushy peas.
Doesn't that sound even worse?
And they go on chips, not
Which
fries.
are?
But if you're going to talk about peas, you have to talk about chips.
Do you guys not call them fries because you don't want to acknowledge the French?
I'm sure that's where it started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Victoria, what's up? Glad you're here. I needed to get those out of my system to start this. Who's with us today, Victoria?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for today. So sitting on my right is a woman that I absolutely love, one of my best friends. She is on the worship team. She's actually one of our worship leaders. She is a founding member of the Majestically Awkward Club and also team member of Team Mysterious Brews. I found one on my finger this morning. So weird. We have mysterious bruises. But she's also the First Lady of Buckley. Is that what you call the mayor's? What do you?
I have no idea.
The mayoral wife? I don't know. We'll call her the First Lady of Buckley.
Most people just still call me Kelly. So.
This is Kelly.
You
Kelly
just call her.
Pifer. Kelly Pifer. It is Kelly
I love
Pifer.
it. Man, welcome.
So excited.
Yeah, we have, your husband has joined us on this podcast, Mr. Takis Pifer.
Yes,
He
Mayor of
is
Buckley.
Mayor Takis, sorry. My apologies. Please don't tell him I didn't call him that. I love Takis because he is the most random individual I've ever met. Like one day me and him are just talking and it can be about sports. The next day he's telling me about some lawnmower he's fixing.
Oh, yes.
And then we're talking about a boat. And then he's hunting. And I'm like, he is the most interesting man in Buckley, Michigan.
This is so
like,
true.
Jack of all trades.
Yes.
Sure.
So, no, we're excited. We're not here to talk about you, Takis.
Yeah.
We're excited. I'm excited to talk about your changed life story. Just for the church family listening to this, just a reminder, we are in our kind of this segment where we're doing Seek First and all these things, but then now we're finding ourselves back at a changed life story. And I want to remind us we haven't done one in a minute, and why we do change life stories. I think that it's important for us as a church, as a podcast, and as just a people of Jesus to remember who he is and what he's done. And that's why these episodes are important. That's why we do these things, is because we want always to make much of what Jesus is doing in and through our lives. And so it can be really easy to live a life and to go through things and to experience the highs and the lows and all of this stuff and forget in the midst of all of that Jesus has been in control, whether it be a really bad time or a really good time. And so we hope that this story can be something that brings encouragement, maybe brings light into your life, and makes you aware of the places where Jesus is continuing to change your life. So thanks for being here and being a part of that. So we'll just kind of kick off. Where are you from?
I actually was born in Alpena, Michigan, so on the other side of the state. That's where my mom is from. My dad grew up in Hillman. My mom grew up in Alpena. They met at a bar. But called Bojangles.
Oh man.
Okay, but anyway, it's a funny story. Won't get into that. But yeah, so I was born in Alpena, and we moved to Traverse City when I was 3.
Okay.
And my brother was 4. So we've been here almost my whole life. My parents still live in the same house I grew up in. So
Your brother's a legend.
my brother's awesome.
He's like
Matt
Batman. Like he's
Yeah.
always in the shadows. You never know where he's
true.
at. But he's incredible. I
Yeah.
love that dude. He's so awesome.
He's an
Yeah.
awesome
Yes.
big brother too.
Yeah.
I've always looked up to him.
So moved to Traverse City when you were 3. What was Traverse City like back? Like not back then. Like I'm not saying that, but like
it was a while ago.
Was it bigger? Like was it more of a small town vibe? Like how was Traverse City?
It was more of a small town vibe back then. There wasn't. I think where the mall is now, the Grand Traverse Mall, it was like all open field.
Okay.
So there was nothing there. There weren't nearly the amount of buildings that there are now.
Yeah.
The mall we had was like the Cherryland Mall, which is now the Cherryland Center. But yeah, it was much more small town.
Gotcha. Yeah. What did you think of Buckley at that time in your life?
I don't want to offend anyone. No.
Yeah.
when I was really, I don't really remember knowing much about Buckley
Yeah.
until I was like junior high school,
Yep.
and I was in Traverse City. So to us, Buckley was like redneck town.
Yeah.
You know, we made fun of Buckley. It was like rednecks, you know.
I love it.
Yeah.
And now you're the first lady. So,
I know.
yeah.
I know.
So, moved to Traverse City, kind of grew up there. It was more of a small town vibe, but like, did you grow up in a Christian home? Like, was Jesus like a part of you guys' life? What was that kind of, how did that work?
Yeah. I actually grew up, both my parents grew up in the church. My dad grew up Lutheran, and I think my mom was in a Baptist church, if I remember correctly. But then she kind of became Lutheran when she married my dad. And I actually grew up in going to Trinity here in town, Trinity Lutheran. And we went to school there too, my brother and I, from kindergarten through 6th grade. So God was always a part of our lives. I wouldn't say I had a super strong relationship with him at that point. Like, I knew about him. Growing up in that environment, they were very good about teaching knowledge, like the basic theological stuff, you know, like the Trinity and who Jesus was, what he did for us, all that kind of stuff. So I had a very good foundation, and even in like, you know, biblical knowledge as far as like where things were found in the Bible, that kind of stuff. We did a lot of Bible verses in school, memory verses and stuff.
So it's kind of like, it was very much so like there was a religion that was a part of your life at that time, but it wasn't necessarily like this idea of like new covenant relationship with Jesus type. Okay, that makes sense. Just most people that find themselves in those circles, no offense to those circles, but that tends to be kind of, there's standards and rules and practices that are in place that kind of you stick with. What was that like for you? Growing up in that, going to school in a Christian school, your parents are Lutheran, like what was kind of your viewpoint of all of that at the time? Was it just homework? Was it like there's something to this? Like what were your kind of...
I think I don't remember ever having a time where I doubted any of it. Like I just knew that God was real. You know, I knew he was there, and I knew Jesus was real, and that wasn't just a story. But I don't know. I guess I was really sheltered, I think. You know, it definitely affected the circles that I kind of ran in. You know, it was like I was always at school or church, youth group, like stuff like that. Girl Scouts, you know, for a brief time. I was
Great
a Girl
cookie.
Scout.
No free shout-outs, Girl Scouts.
I was a Girl Scout dropout. I got bored.
Oh.
But
I got kicked out. That's okay.
Were they still slinging cookies back then? Like,
They
is
were,
that still a big deal?
yeah.
No free shout-outs, Girl Scouts. We'd love some cookies, though.
But yeah, so I was definitely
Just play percussion.
Right.
Very
It's nothing. Foster Christie, when he was on here, was just like,
Bam, bam.
like just banging on them. Like, why are you talking like that?
I have 2 boys and I'm anxious. You know? I'm used
Love
to
it.
percussion.
I love it. So yeah, it was just kind of like that. You found yourself in like these sheltered, like we all just kind of agreed. It's kind of where like I'm seeing like that was just kind of the outlier of that. That's cool. So you went there through 6th grade.
Yep.
What was after 6th grade? Did you just like, did they just feed you the wolves?
No. I did go. I was transferred to the public schools.
Okay.
They did
So yes.
actually.
Yeah.
Yes. They did have a junior high at Trinity, but we decided just it was time to kind of.
That was
expand
Traverse
our
City was
horizons a
still
little
one
bit.
school at that point, right?
For the junior high, there were 2.
Okay.
They had East and West, and I went
Gotcha.
to East. And it wasn't middle school; it was junior high back then. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I transferred there, and that was. It was a bit of an eye opener. I still kind of felt sheltered though, because I still did a lot of church stuff. You know, we were still involved in like youth group and singing at church and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't, it's weird because I don't have a lot of really specific memories from like earlier on in my life, you know?
No, that's cool.
So when people are like, what's your earliest memory? I'm like, I don't know,
Right,
you know?
right.
So
No, it's good because I think that obviously that points to the fact, and I think so many students, like I'm around students all the time, and so many students find themselves in the context that we exist, right, as kind of like where you're at a little bit. Like, man, like I'm in church, like this is just kind of what I do. And I think often it's like, am I experiencing less than because this is where I find myself? And I think it just points to the fact, like, no, it's okay to be a part of this from the beginning, like to go to church. Like there's so many people that are like, oh, my story, like I didn't go to prison for 30 years and then all of a sudden like break free from addiction and fall in love with Jesus. It's like, I almost, for me, and I don't, Victoria, you might agree with this, like I'm more impressed, if that's a good word. It's probably not, like with people that are like, I've just loved Jesus since the beginning. Like there's never been this has just been the way it is. And I think that for me, like that's something that points to like this long obedience. Like I love it. I think it's awesome. I wish that was kind of more the story that we hear of people that are like, no, like this is just what we did and we love Jesus and it's who I am and it's never shifted. Like I'm sure there's times where there's ebbs and flows, but I love that aspect of it. So where did you kind of transitioning into junior high and high school, like going to youth group, like was there a point where it became like more than religion? Like, I don't know, like was there like a relationship aspect that ever played in, or was it always just kind of like, this is what we do?
Mm-hmm. I think I was trying to think about that, and I think there was a point in junior high where I was a nerd, so I was in like the academically talented classes, and all the kids in this class had kind of come from the same school, so I didn't really know anybody, but they kind of all knew each other. And there was one girl that I made friends with, and we became really good friends, and she went to a different church. It was still a Lutheran church, but it was evangelical as opposed to I grew up in Missouri Synod, which is like really strict.
Yeah.
And the evangelical Lutheran church was a little bit not as strict, I guess. And I don't know, we just started talking about things like I would see, her relationship with God as opposed to like kind of my knowledge and stuff. And I don't know, I was just kind of intrigued by that, and I remember that really made a huge difference in my thinking. And so we actually ended up leaving Trinity for various reasons. And so we decided to go to her church and try it out. And there was still a little bit more of I feel like a religion aspect to it, but there was a little more emphasis on the relationship side of it. So I feel like that kind of was maybe a bit of a easing into that. It wasn't like an extreme difference, but it was a little bit more. So I got a little bit more of the relational side, as opposed to the more like, I guess, ritualistic type stuff.
When you say intrigued, like there were things that intrigued you, do you remember like what specifically were like some of the things that stuck out that were like different?
I don't know. I think it was just, she just was a little bit different than, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to explain it.
Yeah.
There's just an air about her, just that I think, when you meet those people who are just in love with Jesus, like they just have an air about them. There's just something different about them. And I was like, well, I know God and I know Jesus, but I don't know him in that way. And that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's cool. It reminds me of like in the book of Acts where they meet Peter and there's other disciples there, but the scripture, it says they were ordinary, unschooled, untrained men, but they'd been with Jesus. And that's kind of like there's just those people that we interact with in life. And it's like, you're very much the same as me, but something's different. And especially in the spiritual sense, it's like, man, like she'd been with Jesus, and that kind of like stuck out to you. There was an air about it, like you're saying. And I think that's cool because there's so many, excuse me, times and places in our lives where like that's all people want to see is like, man, they've been with Jesus. And I think about the story when the triumphal entry, when Jesus is coming into town and they're standing there and the disciples and Philip is standing there watching, and Philip's a Greek and everybody's around, and it says that the Greeks came to Philip, people that looked like him, people that came from the same tradition as him, talked like him, and they said, we want to see Jesus. Like, you've been near him. How do I get there? And I think there's like something to be said about your friend that probably didn't like just overtly like preach like crazy to you. Like she was probably just herself based off what I'm understanding, but it was just like, there's something different about you and I want to know what it is. And I think that that's such a good just word for us, like as people that love Jesus, is like, does anybody know? Like, do you act like it? Can they see it like in your life? Can they see it in your lifestyle? Like, is there something different about you? We talked about last night in a fight club that I'm a part of, just that aspect of like, if we took away everything else, would anybody know that you love Jesus? Like at work, at school, whatever. So I think it's cool to hear that like there was just something different. And she didn't tell me like all the time. I think there's times and places absolutely to preach the gospel, but I think there's also times and places to live it. And I love that you're pointing that out. That's so cool. I don't know. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So you sang at church at the First Trinity, and then were you singing in choirs and stuff at school?
No, I didn't. I just sang, when I was at Trinity, we had this group called, I think we were called the Corliers or something like that. I mean, we had like the red skirts and the white tops. It was it was
You got to bring those back.
all of that.
I'm good.
Yeah. Tab youth worship.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm open to it, but probably not.
Yeah, they were styling. No, but I did that. And then there was like a smaller, like more special choir that I did join like later on in my elementary school years.
You know how humble she was? Very special. It was like, there was one that was better than the other one, and they let me be a part of it. She just didn't want to say it. Yeah.
You'll see that theme running throughout here.
But yeah, and I think in junior high I wanted to be in choir, but I had to choose between the AT classes,
Okay.
the advanced classes, and then choir, and I knew I wasn't going to make singing my career because I was way too shy for that. I'm like, there's no way this is going to be a career, so I might as well go with the academics because I knew I wanted to go to college, and I was good in school, I was a straight A student, so I'm like, it made more sense to do that. So I did that. So I didn't really do a whole lot in junior high until I started going to this other church with my friend Julie.
Yeah, that was my question. So you sang at your first church, and then when you went to her church and sang, what did you feel the difference?
A little bit. So she and I did more like special music together. Like she played the piano and she sang. Her family was incredibly talented musically. And so she would play the piano and I would sing a lot. I would do like accompaniment tracks, just sing along to like a track that was pre-recorded. So I didn't do it. It wasn't like I was up there leading worship because since it was like the Lutheran church, they didn't really have a worship leader per se. Right. They had like someone playing the piano and then we had like the hymnals and stuff. So yeah, so there wasn't really worship leading as far as that's concerned. But I always had a desire to share special music. I think I told you before, like I would hear a song or like see the lyrics to a song or something, and I just would have this desire to like, you need to share that with people. It's just always been this thing, that God puts on my heart. So
that's cool. Yeah. That's very cool.
So did your whole family started going to the Evangelical Lutheran Church? Mm-hmm. Did you see like anything shift within your family? Like as you guys kind of made that transition from whatever the Missouri Synod to like the Evangelical Lutheran, did you see a shift in your family or was it kind of stayed the same? Like we're doing the thing or?
Oh, that's a tough one because there was some other stuff that went on. So going back to what you know about my mom, in late elementary school, early junior high, my mom suffered like 4 years, really, really deep depression. And I don't know at what point. This is kind of the stuff, I don't really remember timelines as far as this goes, but I know it was in that general time. She attempted to commit suicide twice. She told us about it after the fact. We didn't know about it when it happened because we weren't home. We were at school. Right. And so we learned about it after the fact. I don't know how long after the fact. She told us that, we were driving in the car one day and it was just a bad day and we ended up pulling over and we had this conversation and but I don't remember that conversation. I remember having the knowledge that this occurred, but I don't remember the conversation itself. But by the time I was in like, I think, middle junior high, she had gotten help and she was getting better and her faith was strengthened because of the things she had gone through. Like the one suicide attempt, and I tell people this because my mom would not be here if it weren't for God intervening because we were at school, my dad was at work. Back then we had this big garage door that was not automatic. Like you had to lift it up to open it. It was heavy. It was creaky, like really loud. And her idea was to shut the door, get in the car, just turn the car on and just, go to sleep. And she said she was sitting there with her eyes closed and like nothing was happening, And when she opened her eyes and I think she looked in the rear view mirror, the door was open. And it's like there was no one around to open it, So I just feel like that was God intervening. But anyway, because of what she went through, she ended up really, like her faith was really strengthened through that. I think God really worked in her through a lot of that. And because of that, I think it helped strengthen my faith. Like I saw her relying on God and I saw the things that she went through, but she was still here, God brought her through all of that. And so that kind of happened around the same time. So I think there was a combination of things. So I don't I don't know if the shift in our family was completely because of changing churches.
Right.
I think it was just this combination of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we were just starting to see like really how God could work in our lives, as opposed to just the knowledge of him, you know, so.
Yeah, that's hard. How was that like? So you're like junior high, so it's such a formal age. I'm just thinking about all the kids that's hard. Like in your relationship, did you ever find yourself like getting frustrated with God or like angry when your mom's sharing this stuff with you? Like, how could you I don't know. Like, I'm just curious, like how that was kind of navigating your personal relationship with God in the midst of that, or was it just like thankfulness that like he showed up in that space?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't remember ever getting angry with him and saying like, how could you let this happen or whatever. I was just thankful that she was there because I've always been really close with my mom. I'm really shy. I don't make friends easily. So she's always been kind of my anchor, you know, and she's always been there for me and she's my source.
It is hilarious to me that you've ended up with Takis.
Yeah.
Like that your personality has somehow ended up with Takis, who is the personality. I remember the first time I met Takis, I'm pretty sure he was barefoot. It was winter. And he was running lyrics in the middle of COVID, but sitting in the seats running lyrics. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, it's really nice they let him serve like this. Like, I was like, why does he not have shoes on?
So funny. It's so true. Yeah. You are so different.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we are.
But it's perfect.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a good balance.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Have you found, like, are your kids, like, starting to be more, like, one or the other, or is one way and one the other way?
Oh, yeah. Jackson's definitely more like Takis, personality-wise. They both look like him. Yeah. I do all the work pushing him out. They look like him. Like, so fine, whatever. But no, Jackson's definitely more like Takis. He's more outgoing, definitely more of an extrovert.
Yeah.
Evan's interesting because, like, he'll talk your ear off, especially if you're an adult. He relates better with adults for some reason than he does, like, kids.
Very smart.
Yes, he's incredibly smart. Like, oh, it's crazy. But yeah, he'll talk your ear off. But yet he's got that more introverted side. Yeah. Like if he has a couple days in a row where he's done too much, he just wants to stay home. His brother would be like, "No, let's go to the mall or let's go do this." And Evan's like, "No, I just want to stay home." And I'm like, "I hear you, kid." You know?
That's amazing.
So yeah.
So all of that stuff unfolds. How was high school? How was that kind of stepping into like, all right, now I'm going to become a person and I'm going to make some choices of who I want to be.
Yeah.
Like, how was that process for you? Like, did you always kind of stick with I'm going to get good grades, I'm going to do this stuff? Like, was that kind of how it just flowed from there?
Yeah, I was always very much a straight shooter, like a rule follower, you know. I remember this story. My mom loves this story. We were at a hospital one time because my grandpa was in the hospital, and they were, I don't know why, but there were some chairs out in the hallway, and we were like near a ramp, and my mom's always been a kid at heart, right? Yeah. So like, they're taking these chairs and like riding them down the ramp. And I'm like, no, you cannot do that, Mom. Like, I'm like freaking out. We're going to get in trouble, you know? And that's kind of how I've always been. It's
amazing.
like, I don't like to break rules, you know, even if it's something really innocuous like that. It's like, who cares if you're riding a chair down a ramp where no one's around, you know? But
you and Hope can relate well in that. Yeah. She's like very like, these are the rules. We can't break them. And I'm like, watch.
Yes.
I don't know. Do you have anything?
Do you feel like that's, because even though you were always sort of like, I'm going to get good grades, and you kind of knew that more of the STEM field, so the academics was going to be more your passion, that really honed in high school. But do you think that's where, and obviously we're going to really get into this, but that like, I need to do well, maybe the beginnings of that identity that like, I know we're going to get into, and it's unfair because I have pre-knowledge of all this, but because you're my best friend, but it's like, can you, if you had to pinpoint, say, okay, this would be about the time I was feeling that shift in the identity stuff that was becoming more, having some anxiety with that.
Yeah.
That'd be high school.
I feel like there's kind of two elements to that. So, you know, in doing some counseling and stuff on my own in my, you know, later years, you know, going back to when my mom, you know, attempted suicide, there was part of me, I'm also a people pleaser. Well, I call myself recovering people pleaser because I'm trying not to do it as much. But I think some of that, I mean, some of it was from early on. I think part of it's personality in some respects. But yeah, it's like I wanted her to be happy because I was afraid that if she wasn't happy, then she might try it again. And I didn't want to lose my mom, you know. Yeah. So I think I got into this mindset of like I didn't, and I don't like when people are mad at me. I don't like confrontation. I don't like to think that people don't like me for some reason, you know? So I tend to want to make people happy all the time, even at my own expense, you know? So, so that causes some anxiety and stuff. And then yeah, I was definitely a perfectionist. I felt like, my identity definitely came from the things that I felt I was good at, because, being shy and being quiet and an introvert, I kind of always felt a little bit invisible, like insignificant. You know, I mean, I got noticed for being tall. I was always tall, you know, from the time I was really small. I was always taller than all my classmates.
Did you hate that?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, I hated it. I hated it when I was, you know, probably all the way through high school. I was not super fond of being tall. But so it was like, I felt like I wasn't really noticed. And so when I found something I was good at, which was school, I knew I had a decent enough voice that people were like, oh, you sound good when you sing. And then even though I didn't like being tall, I still got noticed for it.
Right.
So it was kind of I have this weird relationship with that where I was like, I don't like it, but it gets me noticed. So, so the things I did kind of became my identity. It was like, if I didn't get an A on something, totally ripped into myself. Like, and that started when I was quite young. My mom said she remembers a time where I had my handwriting homework back when they like taught, you know, cursive and stuff. And
I can't even read cursive.
Just carry on. Don't just.
She just looks so disgusted.
But I wasn't doing it exactly like I wanted to. And she said I erased it so much, I erased a hole through my paper. Dang. You know, I just wouldn't stop erasing. And I think, yeah, that's how I have always been. It's like if I made a mistake, I really got down on myself for it. With singing, if I messed up at all, like if I thought I hit a note wrong or messed up on a word or something, I would beat myself up for it, you know? And it was like...
Now Victoria beat you up for it.
Oh, all the time.
I do.
She's so mean.
That's my jam. That's what I do.
Man, Victoria, the team's really good. Yeah, she beats the crap out of them. So
can you imagine?
Just hit you.
Yeah.
No, again.
Benji's like, I do hit Benji, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
So yeah, if I wasn't good at something, then you know, and it's funny because one of the things, and this is important for, you know, the whole saying yes to God thing. If there was something that I didn't think I would be good at, or that I was too afraid to do because I thought I might be bad at it, you know, it's like I just wouldn't try, you know. So
I relate to that.
Yeah, so it's like I said no to a lot of things out of fear.
Yeah. I know on one hand I'm like listening, I'm like, man, God could not have created a more opposite being to Britton than Kelly Pifer. But then I'm like, but like there's a lot of similarities in that too, of like, man, if I feel like I'm not going to be good at something, I just won't try, because then I just don't have to acknowledge the fact that I failed. Yeah. And I just think there's so many people that their life is just marked by like, I'm not good enough, so therefore I just won't. And
but don't you think I love what you just said was, you said no to so many things out of fear, and I think that's such a huge awareness, and I know that's something you've worked really, really hard to come to, but how many of us would be, well, I said no. You know, we can sugar it up and say, well, I said no because it just wasn't the right time. I said no because, yes, I was nervous. So I said no. I didn't think I was good enough. But to be able to shake all that out and just go, no, it was fear. Yeah. Just name it. It's fear.
That's good.
And none of us want to be like, well, I was afraid because I feel weak, whatever. Yep. But you just said it like it was no big deal. I said no to so many things out of fear. And it's like, let's just stop there for a second, because my goodness, that's an evolved way of thinking. Yeah. Like I said, we can all come up with excuses, and some of them are valid. That's the other thing too, is sometimes it's valid to say no in our minds. Yeah. God's like, yeah, but that's root. Lack of faith, you know, it's like, even if it does seem valid, I'm asking you to, so step out. It's like, so yeah, we can say, well, you know, I'm grieving at the moment for this, that, or the other, whatever. It's like, nope, let's strip this down, call it what it is. It was fear for you. Yeah. Out and out fear.
Yeah, and I think that's just a reality of so much. I just spent so much time with Tim and Heidi, and spent time with other people around the staff, and just through conversations, like, man, like the root of a majority of our emotional reactions to the situations in our lives is fear. Absolutely. Right? It's like, I'm angry. No, you're not. You're scared. Yep. Like, and I think that's such a good self-awareness that's important for people of, what is God asking you to do? And I know that we'll get to this, and I want to kind of set it up, and then we can steer the boat in that direction. It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want. But the reality is, like, so many people, that is it. Like, they say no because fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it boils down. It's like, no, you're just scared. Like, I think about, like Peter getting out of the boat, right? And it's like, you did it. Like, dude, you did it. Like, he walked on water, legitimately.
Terrified.
And then still looked around and allowed fear to seep in of, I can't do this. But you're doing it. Yeah. Like, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
And
being
so I
scared is not to say that being scared or fear is a terrible thing.
Right.
It's normal. There's, whether it's self-preservation or whatever. And then you add all the baggage that we all carry, our histories. But it's like, so we're not saying, you know, oh, fear, that's so terrible. It's like, no, but
I think it's important that
an awareness.
Yeah, awareness. And I think too, like, it's the more I've spent time thinking through and listening to Change Life Story after Change Life Story, is it's all comes back as what is reality? Because in the midst of those moments of fear of failure or fear of rejection, or if I'm not going to do this because I just won't, like something bad will happen. What's the reality in that moment?
What's real?
That's not true, right? And I think that's the thing that often I have, with students especially, but with anybody listening to this podcast, and I'm sure you could relate, like if you could have taken those moments and go back and talk to the young Kelly, like the reality of this is like, it's okay. No one actually cares as much as you think they do, right? Or whatever it is. So I think that's important, is like, what's real? What's real in this moment? And taking time to step outside of yourself, step outside of your situation, and just ask the question, what is real here?
Yeah.
And so, no, I love that. So I don't know, I'll let you just keep leading the way.
I just think that's, I mean, you know, you and I both do therapy, and I'm a huge fan of it. And I don't think it indicates a lack of faith or anything like that. So I could talk about therapy forever because I'm the best therapist ever. But learning to, you and I were just talking yesterday, you sent me a message and you were talking about just that frustration of how the enemy knows your weaknesses and speaks right into all of those. People will think this, or you're not good enough, or whatever. And it's like, it's not that, those words aren't real. And so I think, you can now look back and go, that's been there for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
So back then in high school, so how does that really begin to manifest, other than just, oh, I said no to so many things? Can you talk us through just kind of that period of time and how you can look back now and go, oh, wow, that just manifested itself in so many ways, and how that kind of drove some of your story?
I don't know. I think I just got to this point where, you know, it's like you get these messages in your head that just start playing on repeat, I think, a lot, you know, and mine were like, it was either you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, or it was like, you're too much, you know, like you're too dramatic, you're too emotional, you're, you know, whatever it was. And so, you know, that really affects like even relationships. Like, I mean, I was already shy anyway, and I didn't make friends easily. And then if I did make a friend or somebody seemed to like me, I always had doubts. Like, I don't think, I went into friendships always thinking like they were just my friend out of pity. Like they just were like, oh, well, I feel bad, she needs a friend, you know? And so I had a really hard time believing that people truly liked me for me. And so I tended to kind of wall myself off a little bit, put out this like, this image like of being perfect, you know, or trying to be perfect. Obviously we can't be perfect, but as much as possible, like always happy, always smiling. Oh, Kelly's so sweet, she's so kind. You know, she never does anything wrong, you know, that kind of image, because I felt like if they knew the real me with all my flaws and failures and stuff, I felt like they wouldn't like me and they would just go away, you know?
Did you ever see that seep into your relationship with Jesus?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Because I mean, even now, even though I've grown since then, there are still times where those old things come back, you know, like the enemy, you know, he attacks those spots because he knows that's where my weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a mom, especially like becoming a mom, you know, he'll come in, like he'll whisper in my ear, like, you know, you're not doing a good enough job. You're screwing up your kids. Like, you know, if people knew that you yelled at your kid, they would think you were horrible, you know, stuff like that. And so before I had as strong a relationship with Jesus as I do now, it definitely affected that. Because I, even though in my head, I had the head knowledge that, you know, it's not by works that we're saved, it's through faith. I knew I had the faith. I knew I was saved. But I think there were a lot of times where I felt like God was disappointed with me because I wasn't, you know, reading my Bible enough. I wasn't praying enough, you know, I wasn't sharing the gospel enough, you know, I wasn't out evangelizing, like, or just smaller things. Like if I didn't do something well. If
Right.
I didn't sing well, I'm like, oh, I failed again, And so I think there was that element of feeling like I was disappointing him, along with everybody else, even though that wasn't the case.
It's a lot.
It is. And I think that's the reality of so many people's relationship with Christ is we've taken and associated to him so many like earthly characteristics that he doesn't possess. It's not that he can't, it's that he doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the reality of like there's so many spaces in my life where I can look at my interpersonal relationships, whether it be with a parent, a coach, a teacher, a peer, whatever it is. And whatever I experience in that interpersonal relationship, I directly correlate to my relationship with God. So like in this space, if I frustrate them when I do this thing, God must be frustrated. If I let them down when I don't do this, then God must. And I just immediately start to tie him into all these like human characteristics. And it's like, that's not who he is. I think that's why I love here the thing that we've kind of coined, like the gospel ladder. And maybe you remember it. We've talked about it on the podcast too, but it's like, no, God is who he says he is. And none of that changes. Doesn't matter what I do. Doesn't matter who I have the inability to change and shape who God is. God is good. He's just. He's righteous. He's loving. He's kind. He's merciful. And it doesn't matter who I am, he's still that. And I think that so many people take that perspective of like, God's disappointed because no, because here's the reality of it. You said it, I'm saved, right? By grace through faith, not by works. So now when God looks at Kelly or he looks at Victoria or Britton or whoever's listening to this podcast, here's the trick move that God pulls on all of us. He no longer sees us. He sees Christ and his finished work. And I think that's, if you could just like, I try so often, and it's for me too. I couldn't tell you how many times I wish there was somebody yelling at me about this instead of me just like, it's easy for me to say, but it's the reality of like, if I could just wrap my mind around that, like this idea of like, it's no longer I who lives, but Christ, like that's more than like a pithy like saying that we just say of like, this is my lifestyle. Like, no, that's literally the pathway to salvation. Like you are safe because God does not see you anymore. He sees Jesus.
Right.
And you're considered righteous because Jesus has taken your place. He's your representative and he's there with you. And now you can kind of operate freely. And I think that there's so much peace that can come out of that when you get to that place of that kind of moving, like Tim says, the 18 inches from your head to your heart. Right. And so, yeah,
it's
that's
not
good.
Just peace, it's rest.
Yeah.
It's like the running is exhausting, the trying, striving, the constant expectations for yourself. It's just, so there's an inner peace, but there's a rest because it is exhausting to your soul when we're constantly like striving, like straining to achieve whatever.
And I think too, there's a peace that comes and like a rest that comes out of realizing he's given me everything I need for this, right? I'm not a disappointment because he's equipped me with everything I need in this space to do what he's called me to do.
Right.
And so I think that that's so important too, is like so many people are living in the fear of what if I'm not enough?
Right.
You're not.
Right.
But the Spirit of God in you is. And so I think like that, like there's peace and rest and hope in the fact that like he's giving you everything you need to finish everything he's asked you to do.
Right.
You just have to say yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. Victoria, keep leading the way.
So you graduate and you choose a path for college and so now you're sort of in another, so you went from a pretty sheltered, for your words, the sheltered kind of elementary, and then you went to the public school system, and that's a big shift. And now you have a really big shift when you leave to go to school. And so leaving, so obviously socially, where you're living, academically, and then for your faith. So now what does that look like? Tell them school, like what did you study and where did you study and all that good stuff.
College was, when I look back on my faith journey, college was definitely a huge point of like growth for me, like a strengthening my faith. So I originally wanted to go into vet med because I liked animals and I liked science, and I'm like, well, that would be cool, So I had a full ride scholarship to NMC here in Traverse City. So I did that for 2 years to save money and lived with my parents. So by the time I transferred to Michigan State because they're like the best vet school, and my best friend at the time was already down there. She had done her first 2 years down there, so she kind of had established a bit of a friend group and everything. So I just moved down there, and we decided to, room together. We stayed in the dorms my first year, But going from, and when I was at NMC, it was still relatively sheltered because I'm still in Traverse City with all my friends. I was still involved in church and stuff like that. And most of my friends were, still Christians. So I really hadn't had a huge exposure to like some of the more worldly stuff. So, and I was still pretty strong in my convictions. And so going down to Michigan State was a huge eye opener. Like, and people, after the fact, they're like, you went to Michigan State? Because it's known as like party school sometimes.
Right.
At least that's what they told me. I didn't know that. I just wanted to go to the vet school, you know? And I'm like, I don't know. I just want to be a vet, okay? But, but yeah, so that was a tough time because, there were good things, but we ended up in this friend group that was very much not Christian. Right. There were one of our roommates was dating this guy at the time, who I would say was probably as complete opposite morally for me as you could get, and so but we didn't know anyone else. Like that's who they knew. So we hung out with them quite a bit and, I don't know. I got teased a lot for my beliefs and my morals and stuff. And they would always kind of give me a hard time about it. And, lots of drinking. I didn't do any drinking. I was never a drinker. Right. Didn't really like alcohol or anything. But yeah, just they would get drunk a lot and just say things. And, and there was one point I didn't date a lot. My first boyfriend, I didn't have a boyfriend until I was 21 because guys just didn't like me. I don't know. But, so it was, and he was one of that group, but he was using the Christian verbiage, like all the terms and things that I was familiar with. So I was under the impression that he was a Christian. And I remember we dated for a couple of months, I think. And then he came home with me to Traverse City to meet my family and stuff. And I remember I was sitting in the living room at my parents' house. And he's sitting on the floor, and him and my mom are having this conversation. And the things coming out of his mouth, I was like, what is this? Like, this is not like it. They were getting in this disagreement about like biblical stuff. And I'm like, the stuff you're saying is not biblical. Like, what is going on? Well, it turns out he grew up Mormon, but he was also schizophrenic, and I didn't know that. No. So the combination of the two, he had some really kind of out there beliefs, and I was just in shock. And I remember driving home. We broke up that weekend, and then we had to drive home in the car together. And that was...
I have a similar story.
Really?
So I dated a girl in college for like 30 minutes. But for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to go home with her on spring break. And we broke up at her parents' house on spring break and had a 7-hour drive home.
Mine was 3. That wasn't
It was
bad.
awful. Oh, man. I remember just like turning music on. It was just like... Here we go. Like the awkwardness of like, you need to go to the bathroom. So I feel you on that awkwardness.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So that was kind of like one of my experiences in that group. And then, so I wanted to save myself till I was married, right? So I was a virgin, and I remember I got teased about that so bad, and they would ask me just dumb things. But anyway, there was one of the other guys in the group who was a little bit nicer to me, and he asked me out, and I was like, I really don't think that we're going to be compatible. I didn't think he was a Christian.
Right.
But I was like, well, I'll just go out with him and just see where it goes and everything. And it didn't last. After a couple of dates, I was like, no, and I mean, it was amicable. I was like, no, I really just think we should just be friends,
She knows so many words that I've never used in my whole entire life. Continue. Sorry.
Good for you.
Yeah.
This is good for you.
Those are great. Like, how would you spell that?
Yeah. AMICA. But anyway, but spelling bee.
Yeah.
Where was I going? Oh yeah. So, but I found out later one of the other guys in the group I was talking to my roommate on the phone. He had been drinking a little bit, and he revealed that this guy asked me out as a bet because they were trying to see if they could get me to go against my beliefs. Of course, I didn't.
Oh my gosh.
But so that was hard because I'd always felt like, I never felt like guys liked me anyway. So then to finally have someone ask me out and then find out it was because of a bet, like that kind of
feeds into
more
of the things that you struggle with anyway.
Yes. So I was I was struggling in that group. It was a hard thing to have your beliefs kind of attacked like that. But I was like, I just knew. I'm like, no, these are my convictions. This is what God has told me to do, and I'm not going to stray from it,
Yeah.
And so I started bringing my Bible with me to my classes, and I would, in between classes, I would sit in the hallway and just start reading. I read through the New Testament, and I would just underline stuff and go back over it. And that really just kind of helped solidify it. Like, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I ended up finding, they had a Christian group down there called His House Fellowship, and I joined that, and that was huge. I mean, that was a big turning point for me, because then I had this support of like these good, strong Christian people. The leaders were great. A lot of really awesome Christian kids in that group, that were able to support me. And I ended up leading worship, in that group for a little bit.
Was that more like where you got to do more of the special stuff, or was it still more, was it like different than the tradition that you came from? Yeah. How was that transition?
It was a little different, because it was like the guy, I think his name was Johan. He was Swedish, I think. Yeah. He was playing guitar and singing, and then I just did like alto, or I would sing melody along with him, whatever, So it wasn't anything super formal,
right?
But I always liked doing harmonies anyway. So I enjoy it more because it's a little less pressure, because you're kind of background. Like, if you screw up, nobody really notices as much, as opposed to when you're like the main leader.
Unless Britton's running sound. Yeah. He will accidentally have you turned up higher than the person actually leading worship, just based on the fact that he has no idea what he's doing.
But yeah, so college was a huge turning point. And it also, another, as far as the academic side of it, that was another area where I saw God step in, because I wanted to be a vet, but I ended up doing an internship, or not internship, I forget what the word is. I was just an assistant at a vet clinic anyway, up here and then down at Michigan State. And it was just something I couldn't do. It was too, I couldn't distance myself emotionally. I'm like a huge animal lover. So to have to go in and see sick animals all the time. And like, there was one summer where I was, being an assistant at a clinic up here in Traverse City. And it was like, we had so many euthanasias that summer. And I'm like, I can't do this,
Right.
And I thought, well, I like the science part of it, the lab work. So I'm like, maybe I could be a vet tech, but you're still pretty involved with the animals, And that was at the time when CSI was kind of a big thing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I like lab work. I'm like, what about forensic science? How cool would that be? DNA and all this stuff. And so I decided to try that. Well, I had to take a intro to criminal justice class down at Michigan State. And we had to look at crime scene photos. And I remember the thing that sticks in my head, we listened to this 911 call of this young girl, and she was like being attacked and stabbed like while she was on the phone. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me either. I'm like, I can't do that. Cause that left a mark, emotionally. So I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I have no idea where to go with this. And I'm already, 4 years into college at this point. Maybe it was 3.5. But so I went to the advisor and I said, what do I do? Like, this is what I like, but I have no idea. And she said, well, have you ever heard of clinical laboratory science? I was like, no. And so she explained it to me, and it's basically you run all the tests in a hospital lab or a medical lab. And I'm like, that sounds cool, So I changed my major to that, and that's what I ended up graduating in. And the cool part about it, and this is where, I see God's hand working in this, is they had two separate programs you could go on. One was like the medical technology program, which was you went through school, you graduated, then you had to find your own internship. The clinical laboratory science program, the internship was built in, but they only worked with, they had limited number of spots, and they only worked with like certain locations. Well, one of them was Traverse City. So I got into the program, which was awesome. And then I ended up getting into Traverse City. So once I graduated from college, I was able to come home, live with my parents while it was like an 8-month internship. Then I graduated and they hired me as a tech right after that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Very cool. So for you, like, as you were, was there a point where you realized, just thinking back to your story and like being in that community of people that like, man, you know what? Like, I had this conviction and it didn't really align with the group, but they were just kind of the people I knew. And then finding yourself at his house and doing that, like, was there a realization in there of like, man, community matters? Like, was there like, did you ever have that moment, or is it like just hindsight looking back? You're like, oh man, I learned that there, but I didn't know I was learning it. Like, did you kind of have that realization?
I think I did, yeah, while I was there, because you go from this kind of like stressful, environment where you don't really feel like you belong. It's like you're constantly getting teased, and it's tiring, it's exhausting, and it's like I didn't want to be who they wanted me to be. It's like I wanted to be me myself, and to be myself. And like it was tiring. But then when I joined this other community, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, like a weight had been lifted off. It was like, oh, like I have support now. Like I have these people who understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
How does that? So one of your things at that time in high school was, I want to be liked. I want to be accepted. I don't think I will be though. So I'm going to put out this thing that could put that wall up, or not the wall up, but this shine on it to make everything look perfect. And now here's kind of the only group of people and you want to have friends down there. So how hard was that? I mean, it sounds like it really wasn't that hard, but I'm thinking about myself, and it's like I was a bit of a chameleon when I was a kid because I moved around a lot. John would talk about that third culture thing, and it's like because I moved around so much, I would just become whatever people needed me to be. Obviously, I didn't grow up in the church, but so.
Well, we wouldn't know, Victoria, because you've never done your change life story on here, so.
Shut up, Britton.
That's right.
But that's like how. Okay, back to you. So how does, like you said, it was kind of exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's like, but was it? I'm trying to get to my question here. So was it triggering that insecurity, or was it like, no, it's really not. It's exhausting fighting against them, but you weren't fighting so much against your own stuff. Does that make sense? You know what I'm asking? Okay.
Yeah. I never wanted to stray from who I was, I guess, you know, so even though, I mean, I had that side of me that would put on kind of this facade for people, and, I'd be like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm perfect, whatever. But with them, it was like, it was different because I didn't want to be like that. Right. It's like I still had that strength of my convictions. Yeah. It's like I knew that I wasn't going to stray from that. I knew I didn't want to. I knew I couldn't, because...
So you could almost externalize it a little bit because you're watching their behavior, like literally seeing it. And you know what I mean? As opposed to, I'm not good enough, they're so great. Like you can see they're not that great.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's really smart.
That's hard, man.
Yeah,
so hard in college.
Because I remember, they were asking me, or one guy in particular was really getting on me about, like, they wanted me to get drunk. I'm like, okay. And they're like, why don't you get drunk? Just have a few drinks, just get drunk. And I got so frustrated. I was like, you give me one good reason why I should get drunk and I will. And of course, he didn't have one because there really isn't one. And I was like, okay, thanks. Like, now leave me alone,
So much like, smarter than me.
I'm like, you like big brained it. Big brained it. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm like, I did not big brain it. Yeah. Dang it.
Maybe I should have paid attention in school.
So now you're back here. You have your degree because super smart. You're like my favorite scientist. And so now you're back here and you're back living at home. Mm-hmm. But do you feel like you've changed? Like, were you seeking something different faith-wise than just going back to your parents, like your family church?
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to remember where we were at that time as far as churches go, because we were involved in a few, like, smaller churches that just kind of, ended up not working out. So, but yeah, I think when I came back, I definitely had a renewed sense of, like, a renewed sense of faith, like I just want more. I want more of a relationship, it's like, it's like I could see God working through so many different things. And I'm like, this is cool. Like I can see him working. And even in the hard stuff, I just knew I could feel he was there, and,
but still shy.
Yeah. Still shy.
Fantastically awkward.
Yes. I will say I did gain some confidence in my job. Because I was good at what I did, and people would say that, like I was getting positive reinforcement, that I was good at what I did. So I did
some of the identity stuff.
Yes. Okay. So again, like I was getting my identity from what I did. Like if I made a mistake at the lab, which it happens, people, we're human, we try not to, but it does. But we have ways of catching them and reconciling things. But if I made a mistake, I would still get really down on myself, and I would be like, oh, like, they're going to fire me, or like, I wouldn't go to that extreme because I knew it wasn't that bad, but But there were times, where things would happen and I'd be like, like I'm horrible. Like why am I such a screw up? Stuff like that. So, yeah, I definitely did find a lot of identity in my job. I mean, that definitely became a huge part of it. Because again, it plays back into, I felt like I was always smart. I was good at school, and that extended into my job. I was smart. I was a scientist. So I took a lot of pride in the work I did and being able to say, like, I'm a scientist. Like, this is cool. So, yeah.
So transitioning into like his house, more like, I don't know. I just assume it was a little bit different than the Lutheran church theologically, maybe, or like in that, it's like the flow of the service and all that. Like going into that, did you see that like change anything in your like relationship with Christ? Like where it was becoming more than like a head knowledge, like where it was like becoming like, man, like this is, like, there's something happening in my heart. Like was there anything that shifted there, like going into that? Yeah,
I think so. I definitely started feeling like, you're talking about the head to heart thing. I definitely started feeling that there was more of a like a heart connection to, instead of just knowing all the stuff that was in the Bible. I started, when I would take my Bible to class and read it, like I would read these words that I've been reading since I was, little tyke in the elementary school, but they had more meaning now. It was like, oh, like, yes, like this applies to my life, and this is how I can, use it in my life. And so I definitely think there was a shift, going there and being amongst these people who were more relational as opposed to the ritual stuff.
Yeah. How did that kind of transition back home? Like, did you find it, like, were you still like desperate? Like, did you realize like, man, I want to be involved in a community like that? So like, did you go looking for that? Like, how did like relationship with Christ wise, like how was the move back home, and like, how did that kind of flow starting adulthood and all of that?
Yeah. I think going into the job that I had, it was not a terribly Christian environment. There were very, very few fellow Christians in that environment. So that kind of spurred me to, want to find more of a community, like more of a Christian community. And, my family and I, we tended to stick together because we're really close. Like it's just my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, just the four of us. And so we ended up usually going to the same churches together, and it was cool. My brother and I, neither of us were married. We weren't dating anyone. And so it was nice because we'd go to church, and then we'd talk about like the sermon, and we'd have these really good talks about, things that were talked about at church or other things going on in our lives. And, but I just lost my train of thought, but anyway,
just that relationship deepening.
Yeah. So,
after his house.
And so we kind of had some churches we went to, and there wasn't anything wrong with them necessarily. It's just it wasn't the right fit for us, and we just were kind of searching. And we actually ended up at the church I was at before I came to the Tab was this small little church. I mean, if we had like 30 people on a Sunday, we were doing well. And I would say probably like 90% of the people were like 60 and over. So like I started going there before I met Takis. And
how did you meet Takis?
Oh, that's a story. I think he may have said it in his story. But anyway, do you want me to do that first?
No, you can do this. Okay. I'm so excited to hear about this.
That's a story. That poor guy. But yeah, so the smaller church I was at, it was actually really good because I had started gaining confidence in my worship leading because I had I had other experiences where I was being put in leadership positions, which is funny because growing up I was like, I am not a leader, I'm not a leader. But yet God kept putting me in these situations where like I was in a college connections group, for a while, and the leader there made me a small group leader for the girls, and then he made me the worship leader there. It was just a guitar guy playing a guitar and me singing. I don't even think we had microphones, but it was just these small stepping stones. And I think
so. Like nothing that really pushed you.
No, no. I mean, to me, it felt pushed because I'm so not. I was so not confident about that kind of stuff at the time. But I think God knew He had to ease me into it, otherwise it just wasn't going to happen. So I ended up at this little church, and I was going there with a friend, and I think, if I remember, I can't remember all the details, but I feel like there was a Sunday that we went, and they didn't have anyone to help lead worship. And my friend who I was going with, they knew him because he'd been going there longer than me, and they came up to us, and they were like, so any chance you guys would be interested in maybe getting up and helping sing today? And I was like, okay. So so we did, but it's such a small church.
Can you imagine if you did that to somebody here?
No.
God.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I guess I have done that to you. Kind of.
But it wasn't like, I mean, it was literally the day of.
That would be amazing.
Okay.
Like, we were just going to sit down.
Make me so happy.
Yeah, we were just going to sit down and be at church, and they're like, no, can you get up and sing?
Yeah.
Britton, you want to play tambourine today?
Yeah.
You already know.
But yeah, so I did that, and so I started leading worship there, and it's a small church. You know, it was just the pastor played the guitar and sang. His daughter, who was, I think, 11 at the time, and I was like 20, in my late 20s maybe.
So you felt fairly confident.
Yes.
This wasn't like pushing you outside of a...
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was kind of outside your comfort zone, but not really.
Yeah.
And you were still singing very quietly.
Oh, yes.
She
yes.
Sang very quiet. She sang very quietly.
I did.
Did you sing quietly at your audition here?
Yes. I did.
She sang quietly here for a very long time.
Very long time.
Yes.
Oh, very long, yes. Yeah. But yeah, so I was confident in that because it was stuff, you know, I'd always sang very soft stuff, like hymns, things like traditional, more traditional, like, you know,
so in that
church
setting,
music.
it played well.
Yes.
You were able to say yes to that without too much fear.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't too big of a deal. And it was a small group of people. And they were very like...
They probably couldn't hear you anyways. Based off the age you were,
they were very welcoming too. It was like, you know, nobody cared. It was like, so it was a good, again, a good stepping stone. But then I met Takis.
and that's
life
our
changed
podcast for today.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
No, Takis and I met at he used to work for Munson as well, but he worked off site for the supply chain people, and I worked in the lab. So in the lab, you don't see anybody. You're kind of like, we're all introverts in the lab, so you don't really know anyone outside the lab. But I decided to go to the Christmas party, the Munson Christmas party, which was at the Grand Traverse Resort,
the
big
party
ballroom, And he was there with his group. They sat us at group tables, you know, like, so I was with the lab people, he was with the supply chain people. And this is the weirdest set of coincidences, you know, nothing's chance, right? So the table next to us was the phlebotomist, who are the people who draw your blood.
I just love this. I can see it.
It's like a
so
setup
clear.
to a joke.
I know. And so his friend at the time was dating a girl that was a phlebotomist. And so, but his friend didn't know he was there. And somebody heard somebody laugh. I think his friend heard him laugh or something. And so like they found each other anyway and like, what are you doing here? Well, I work here. What are you doing here? Well, I date this girl and she works at Munson. And so, and so his friend was like, talking to the people at, you know, his girlfriend's table, I was like, hey, I have this friend who's single. Like, do you know any nice single girls? And the phlebotomist knew me because we worked with them. You know, they would bring blood samples and stuff. And they were like,
so romantic.
Yeah.
They're like, there's this girl over at that table, you know, and she's really nice and all this stuff. I didn't know any of this was going on. Like, I'm just sitting at my table. And the funny part is I had a couple of experiences right now with guys where I was done with guys. I didn't want to date anymore. I'm like, I'm going to get another cat. I'm going to be that person, you know, with all the cats. Like, I'm so over guys. I don't want anything to do with men right now. And so I'm just, you know, enjoying the party. And
as much as an introvert can.
Right.
Oh, true story.
And this, one of the phlebotomists that I knew, because she also worked as a lab aide, she came over and she was like, hey, I have a friend of a friend and, you know, he wants to meet you. And I said, no. I'm like, no, I don't, because I don't want to offend anyone. But at the time, that group of people did not have a reputation for being the best, like morally, you know? And I was like, I really wanted a strong Christian guy. And I'm like, there's no way that they know a guy that I would probably want to date, you know? And so...
See, people you surround yourself with is important.
Yeah, so...
Students.
So I said no.
Takis.
And then the next...
Okay.
Yeah. And the next thing I know, they're bringing this guy over. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I don't even want to talk to this dude right now.
Poor Takis.
But like, you know, me being the polite person I am, I'm not going to just be mean and be like, see you later. So he sits down, he starts talking to me, and I'm being polite, you know, and like, hey, you know, and it was
so good.
It was funny because, you know, he's from Buckley. He grew up here. And I had moved to Buckley after my internship was over and I had saved up enough money to buy a house. I moved out to Buckley. So I was living just down the road. And when he found that out, he thought someone was pulling a fast one on him because he's like, if she lived in Buckley, I would know. You know, he's like, there's no way she lives in Buckley. And
that's why he's the mayor.
Exactly.
But the funny thing is I had moved here when he was going off to college. He's a little bit younger than me.
So great.
And so we talked and I was polite and then everyone at the table was leaving to go up to like an after party up in a hotel room. Not my scene at all.
Right.
And I just remember feeling like it was just him and I at the table and I was like, I gotta go. And so he's like, okay. So he walks me to the door and we shook hands. And then I left. And I was like, well, that's the last time I hear of him,
story.
you know?
It's the best.
And so the funny thing is, well, and I should say in our conversation, I was a little bit intrigued because he started talking about things like Creation Fest and like different Christian artists that you wouldn't know unless you were like really into more of like Christian. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, still, I'm not interested, you know? So he leaves and what I didn't know was he had looked at my name card on the table and he found me on Facebook. And so he didn't add me as a friend because that would have been too forward. So he sends me messages, you know, he starts messaging me and
shockingly subtle for Ted.
Yeah. And so, you know, he sends me questions. I'm answering politely. And I remember telling my mom, I'm like, I don't know, Mom. I just don't know if I'm interested in him. But yet I was stalking him on Facebook too, like looking up all of his stuff.
Right.
Like, and so he's messaging me and I answer his questions. But I'm still really guarded because I've been hurt and I'm like, I don't want to deal with guys. And I didn't really want to date. So
then her lawnmower broke.
No. But he's sending me these messages and I answer the questions. And then he decided to send me one where he wasn't going to ask any questions because his thought was if she's interested, she'll start asking me questions. And I didn't respond. So yeah. So, and it was partially because I got busy and I kind of forgot. It wasn't like super intentional. Like I just don't want to respond. So then he talks to, you know, Josh Sprunger. So I guess he goes and talks to Josh because they're college friends. They've known each other since college. And I think Tech has said something like, okay, she's not responding. Like, what do I do? And I think Josh told him, well, you can either just forget it or you can just take the leap and ask her out and see what she says. So he did.
Sounds like Sprunger advice.
Yeah. So
Solid.
he did. He asked me out to dinner and I said, how about coffee? Because in my head, I was like, if it goes bad, I can get out quicker.
That's fair. That's solid. That's also very solid. Yes.
So we met at
checks out.
Espresso Bay downtown. We met at Espresso Bay downtown and we talked for a while. And I was like, okay, this is actually not bad, you know? And then we had to leave. I don't want to make this go on too long, but like, it was kind of funny because they decided to vacuum out the fireplace while we were there. So you're sitting there trying to talk and this vacuum cleaner goes on and we're like, can't hear each other. So we have to just sit there awkwardly for a minute. Like, okay.
Hilarious.
So we finally decide to leave. And I felt like it wasn't really that big of a moment, but I felt like for me, it was this pivotal moment. We're standing outside of Espresso Bay and he's like, do you want to go home or do you want to go somewhere else? And I was like, I can just go home and just forget about it. Or I'm like, no, let's go somewhere else. So we went down to Brew, you know, and we just sat there and had like chips and salsa and drank water and stuff and just talked. And I remember that night, I talked to my mom. I think he did give me a hug when we left. But I remember saying to my mom, well, I'm not interested.
Tex is like, I'm so flattered.
So I think I didn't want to admit to myself that I was actually interested in a guy, you know. So, but then we started dating and obviously we got married and we've been married. It'll be 10 years next year. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So is he the reason you started coming to the Tab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a long way of saying that.
Yeah.
So he did start coming with me to that little church for a while, but then we merged with another church and it was not the greatest merge in the world.
Yeah.
It was kind of a takeover and like we tried to kind of merge our worship teams and I won't go into detail, but I just had kind of a not great experience.
Yeah.
And it kind of, the little bit of confidence I had been building, like shot it right down. Like it was, I still have to get over some things from that. But yeah, so Takis at that same time, Takis was like, well, you know, they're looking for vocalists for the Tab worship team. Like they announced auditions. He's like, you should try out. And I was like, I don't sing those kind of songs, Takis. Like that's not my thing. Yeah. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to put me on the team. And he said, well, you should just try. Like, just try. And I was like, okay. So I signed up. And then it was the Tuesday after Easter. I remember this very clearly because Good Friday, we went to church here. And that was back when we were still in T1. And I remember Carrie Hart was leading. I don't know if you've ever heard Carrie Hart. You know Carrie?
She's pretty fantastic.
She is amazing. She was like the winner of Cherry Idol, I think, at some point.
She's just amazing.
Yeah, she has an amazing voice. So
I've actually known her almost as long as I've lived here.
Yeah.
She's one of the people I've known longest.
That's a really long time.
So
27 years.
Yeah, so I hear her lead the service, and I'm like,
she's phenomenal.
There's no way I'm like, they're not going to put me on the team if that's what they're expecting. Like, I can't sing like that, So I was in tears, like literally in tears, because all of my fears are coming back, like the you're not good enough, like all the same stuff. So Tex is like, just try. And so I went to the audition. I didn't cancel. But yes, I sang very quietly. They had to keep cranking up my microphone to the point where I think it was feeding back, if I remember correctly. And it was Brian at the time, and he's so chill, which was awesome because that helped. But yeah, so I tried out. Takis came. He sat in the chairs.
Did he have shoes on?
I think he did have shoes on, because it was. Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I made the team, and it was a cool experience for me, starting out under Brian's leadership, because he was so laid back and he was so kind, and it's like, if you messed up, it was okay, it wasn't a big deal.
That helped with some of those anxieties. Yes. You're still, so even though we fast forwarded a while here, you're still dealing with a lot of the shyness, which is fine. The anxiety, not so much the perfection, all those, will they like me? Well, you're still deeply in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And I mean, I even remember thinking, even after I got on the team, I still felt like I was the weakest link on the team. I'm like, well, they put me on, but I'm definitely not the strongest singer,
right.
And so, yeah. So
now there's Adam, so you're good.
Yeah.
Because he's definitely the weakest link.
We're all going to be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, yeah, but I was still struggling with that. Like, and that's why I sang so quietly, because I was afraid to like do anything else, because that's all I'd known was singing quietly. I knew if I sang quietly, I sounded at least okay enough that people were like, oh, you have a really pretty voice, know? So
staying safe.
Yes, I was still staying safe. Like I was just singing my alto harmonies. Didn't want to do anything high, because I'm not a high singer. And so, yeah, so it was still relatively, I mean, stepping out and doing the audition was kind of a big thing for me, but then yeah, I kind of settled into.
How was the transition from like your smaller, more like traditional church to the Tab and all that? Like, how did that transition go? Was it cool? Like seamless?
It was terrifying.
Was it?
No, it was.
I've seen some of the videos, so I can imagine.
Yeah. No, I actually, I was nervous at first, because being in a bigger church, obviously there's a lot more people. Yeah. And I had come from such a small church that felt like a family, And it was hard for me to leave, because I felt like I belonged there. Yeah. People seemed to accept me. I didn't feel judged. And coming into a larger group, it was like,
it's dangerous.
Yeah, you run that risk of like, people are going to judge me. Like, what are they going to think? I'm this new girl singing on stage. And then part of it too is Takis grew up here. Everyone knows Takis.
Yeah, they do.
So I'm like Takis's wife now. Like, they don't know who I am.
Right.
I'm just Takis's wife. And so I kind of felt pressure from that too. Like, I need to put on a good show for these people, because I'm Takis's wife, and like, I don't want them to think like, wow, what did Takis do marrying this woman? Like, so that was kind of a thing.
They were all thinking actually the exact opposite of that. Like, how did Takis pull this off?
She's so out of his league.
So what was kind of within that context of like all of that, moving into a new church, all the new like relationship with Jesus is still just maintaining? Was there like a depth that was coming out of it, like this, like you're taking risks that kind of you've never really taken before? Like, was there like a deepening, or was you just like, all right, I'm just doing the thing?
Yeah. Did you feel like this was I'm saying yes to, like, you were consciously like, I'm giving him my yes, or is this just, I'm doing these things, as opposed to this is a conscious, he's calling me to it, and I'm being bold and saying yes? Because that seems like more of something that's happened maybe over the last like 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the time, like I know we've talked before, singing has always been something I felt called to do. Like, if I'm not singing, specifically like worshiping in some aspect, I feel like something's missing. Like, my soul feels like not dead per se, but just like something's missing. Like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so like, that's part of why I tried out, auditioned, because I'm like, I knew I needed to be singing. But yeah, I don't think there was that element of like, I'm going to give God my yes no matter what. Right. Like, this was more just a soul feeling of like, this is what I should be doing, but I'm still really scared, Yeah, I don't think that came until later on in the game.
What shifted? Like what for that shift? Let's make that.
I would have to say the Rattle series. That really that made me do a lot of things I didn't want to do.
You were uncomfortable. That whole series, you were
yes.
very uncomfortable.
Yes. It really,
big shifts.
Yeah, something about that series, God just really worked in my heart. Like, you know, you need to get over these fears and stop putting your identity in the things that you're doing and rely on Him. Because so many times I do things in my own strength, you know, and it's like I almost feel like I have to, you know, it's like I'm strong, like I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody, you know, and it's like.
And then you hit the limit of your strength.
Yeah,
and then that's it.
Nothing. Yeah,
you can't really say yes to much else.
Yeah. So during the Rattle series, I mean, one of the things I did was I said yes to leading that high school group. Like it was a Bible study group, and I remember texting you and Martin. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, please help.
So
please
fantastic help. Watching you. Just it was agonizing.
Does that group still meet?
Great.
They do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you still doing it?
I'm not. It didn't fit into my schedule this year, but
see Sunday nights around here, 6
I know.
5 to 7 o'clock.
Adam's been trying to recruit me, but maybe
that was an amazing watch.
No, I loved the messages of like,
man, you say
what
yes.
do I like? Just I could show you the Facebook messages are like these like. First of all, Kelly, I've never read that many words at one time in my whole entire life. I don't know how you typed all those into one text.
It was
it's so cool though.
It's so spoken to your. Yeah. These are going to be high school girls. There was that whole thing, and they're cool, and I wasn't cool in high school, and I'm kind of nerdy, and I'm just reading the same thing. I'm reading all these messages like, you have no idea how amazing you are.
Yep.
And part of the impetus kind of behind this, you doing this that you and I talked about, is so many. We have these stories of my childhood was like this, my childhood was like that. I made decisions, and then boom, those big like. Yeah. But not everybody has the road to Damascus stories, and if you do, that's fantastic. But just by virtue of you being kind of more of a shy, quiet person, getting someone like you on the podcast is difficult. But there are so many people listening to the podcast going, but I'm shy and I'm quiet. There's no one telling a story that sounds like mine, or the slow and steady, just that Jesus been in my life my whole life. But that was like, man, that was a huge callback.
And it's
doing
cool
the high school thing. It was hitting all those. Yeah. That was very tough. And
it's cool to see too, like
did it.
The reality of like, it would have been really easy to find your identity in your past yeses. Like, I did the audition.
Oh, yeah.
I've arrived.
That's so
right.
Good.
I've done what I've needed to do. Like, there's so many people that have like said that yes before, whatever it might be, and now like I'm done. But sure, like you have that strong conviction and gifting to sing, but I have more. Yeah. I have more for you. And I think that aspect, not me, obviously I have a wonderful plan for you serving at Tab Youth, but that like God saying like, I have more for you.
He's so good.
Like, will you say yes?
Yeah.
And I think just that reality of like, I don't know, the thread that I've seen from the beginning of this conversation just to now is whether it be small or big, like leading that high school group, is like time after time after time, your convictions always outweighed your comfort.
Oh, that's so
even
good.
Though it was uncomfortable to audition and Tagus had to talk you into it, you did it. And it's like, even though they asked you 4 minutes before church started to lead worship, you did it. Even though you were a part of that group that it would have been way easier just to compromise, you didn't. And I think that there's just something to be learned. There's something to take note of in your changed life story, is just this idea of like your convictions, you never compromised your convictions because of your comfort. Like you were willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of continuing to align with your convictions. And I think that's just so counter anything we see in the world today, is like, no, my comfort says this, so I'll just change my convictions. I'll try to redefine what truth is to fit my comfort rather than this conviction. And I think it just comes from, I think you that had the blessing of being introduced to like biblical theology and standard early in your life. And that kind of guided the way. But I don't know, I just see this like overwhelming, like strong, convicted, whether you were shy, introverted, whatever, you said yes to Jesus your whole life, even when it wasn't easy, and you did it quietly, which is even harder, right? It was just like, I'm just going to continue yes after yes. It's just like, you are, like, your story is just like, this is what dominoes do. And I don't know, I just appreciate
when
that.
you say comfort, I love you. Did you steal that, or is that yours?
I probably made it up,
or
I probably stole it.
You probably stole it. It sounds like an Andy Stanleyism.
No, I promise you I didn't steal it from you. because then you'd have to listen to him. And no offense if you do, but
you just made a toot noise in the microphone.
that was Benji.
Throw him under the bus.
So you say you chose conviction over comfort. When I think of comfort, it was like, well, I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I have $20 in my pocket. I don't want to give 10 because I want to keep the 20. We're talking conviction over sometimes like abject, like horror and terror and like, there's no way I can do this. I want to throw up. It's like, we're not just talking like, I want to be more comfortable. It's like, no. This is like
survival.
Yeah. Legit survival. Like I'm having I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm crying. I can't sleep. It's like, and you still were like, oh, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying comfort. Yes. But
I love that.
I'm saying even comfort is like not just, I want to be comfortable because we want to be comfortable. We've been comfortably off. I have enough money to, it's like, no. This is like the enemy is full on attacking you constantly. That's, I think, huge
for sure,
is that your conviction is so strong. It's one of the things I absolutely love about you. I
think one of the things that played into that too was just, there were times in my life where I didn't listen to God. It's like, especially when it came to the area of dating, because my plan was to be married by 25 and have at least one kid by the time I was 30. Well, when 30 hit and I was still single, it was hard because all my friends were getting married. I wanted to have a family. And so like, I didn't always pick the best until Takis. I had a couple of doozies that I picked, and I got hurt because of it. And I think, looking back on stuff like that made it, I don't want to say easier to say yes to God, but it was like, it just kind of reinforced that like, well, but if I say no, like what's going to happen? Like I knew that better things lie ahead if I said yes, as opposed to trying to do it my own way, because I tried that and it didn't work so well.
Yeah, it's like, no. Well, when I say yes, God, it works out. When I say no, I brought a Mormon schizophrenic home to meet my parents.
Right,
like,
exactly.
I mean, when you put it
drastic
like
example.
Yeah. Well, and and there was another guy I had dated. This was after I had got my job at Munson, and I was with him for, I think, like 9 months total. Like, yeah, because we dated for a while, then we broke up, then got back together, and then broke up again. But that was still at a time where I wasn't real confident in myself, and he thought he had himself figured out. He had read all these self-help books, and now he was going to help me, because I had all these insecurities, but he was really impatient with them. And when my insecurities would surface, he was not nice. Like one, he called me pathetic a couple of times, told me to shut up. And like the person I am now looking back on that, I would have never put up with that. I would have said sayonara after like the second date, and I've been like, see you later. But I thought
you see the growth from who you
but it's
were
like,
then.
I thought that's the best I was going to get. So I was trying to make it work. And it took some strong Christian women in my life that I knew saying, this isn't good, like it shouldn't be like this. If this is from God, like you shouldn't be feeling like this, and
that's good too.
Yeah. So
I love that.
So now you're on team, you're here. And how soon after you were on team did Evan come along? Did you have your first?
Gosh. So he was born in 2017. And I think we started at the Tab, it was shortly after we got married, which was 2014. So Evan, I was probably in team a couple years, maybe before Evan came along.
Because that's a huge, I think, obviously for women becoming a mother. But I think when you kind of alluded to it earlier, but when you are a perfectionist and it's like, and your children kind of become an extension of you. So if you don't have the perfect child and children are horrible, especially little ones, it's like, how does that start to feed in? But now you're on team. And great things are happening there. But so the Rattle series was a huge change for you.
Yes. Yeah.
So how does all that kind of come in together, becoming a mom? Because that was a big thing.
It was a big thing. It was. That's hard because, again, trying to find my identity. Now my identity. So after I had Jackson, which is my second child, I became a stay-at-home mom. I just felt like God was calling me to do that. And so I did. But because I kind of lost that identity of being a scientist, I'm still a scientist because that's what I graduated
Based off
in.
the words I've heard you use today, you are a scientist. Scientist of words.
Yeah, but I'm not a practicing scientist anymore. As
You
far
were
as
today.
like the lab stuff. And
In this room, yes, you are.
Scientist.
so that was hard because that was a huge part of who I was. Like I said, I took a lot of pride in what I did, and it was cool being like, people are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm a scientist,"
Right.
And
But you knew God. I mean, God was so clearly.
oh yes.
I mean, I remember that whole when you were making that decision, the things you were wrestling with, and how God was opening doors.
Yes.
Because there's obviously a lot of things have to change when you become, have a one parent working family. You guys had to make some look at it. You were so careful, and you did your due diligence, but ultimately was like, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
It was
It was a big God thing.
Yeah. So then I had to shift from, I felt like I lost my identity over here with the lab scientist part of it. And now I'm a mom. And so, that I kind of made that my identity, and I hadn't learned my lesson yet that it's not about what I do, So I made that my identity. So yes, when you have kids who start acting up or you're having issues with them, both my boys can be very strong-willed, especially Jackson, but Evan, even when he was, Jackson's age, we had some real struggles with him, and I was just feeling like a failure. Like I don't know how many times I've texted her being like, I am failing at this, Mom. Like, what am I doing wrong that my children are acting like this, and
oh my gosh, nothing.
yeah.
And everybody knows you, and everyone knows your husband, and you're on stage at church, and
Yeah. So my kids are the ones running around the seats and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Don't worry. So are everybody else.
I know. But
both campuses.
But yeah, so that
Manistee
became
is a madhouse. Your kids are nothing compared to Manistee. It is like a street fight in our lobby at the conclusion of service. No one is safe. I recommend anybody over the age of 60 use a walker because there's no telling what could happen to you through that lobby. It is insanity.
Oh my gosh.
Am I wrong?
No.
It's insane. It's the best. It's your favorite, but you're like, somebody's going to die.
It's a hard knock.
Mortal Kombat, the Tabernacle
Yeah,
version.
it's insane. Campus pastor kid beating up first-time visitors, kids, and you're like, what is happening out here?
Goodness.
Somebody help. Kids are just licking the windows. Welcome to the Manistee campus.
Jackson's licked our windows at home, but he's never licked the church windows, as far as I'm aware.
Well, wouldn't be the first one.
Yeah. But anyway, so that became a part of my identity. And then it kind of bleeds over into the other areas. Like if I feel like I'm failing there, then I start feeling like, well, I don't know that I should be up on stage leading right now. Like I'm not in this good place mentally. I'm not connecting with the worship because I'm struggling on my, individually. So I shouldn't be up there leading people. Like I have no right to be up there. That's my inner thoughts, and yeah, Victoria's talked me down from many an emotional ledge.
Yeah. It's one of those like, well, if you had to be perfect to lead worship, it wouldn't happen.
There'd be nobody
Right.
on stage,
Right.
and it'd be an empty room.
Yes, that's good. No,
That's it.
yeah, I love it. So what would you say kind of in this season, like if you could leave people with like what something like Jesus is teaching you or he has taught you, like what would you leave the people with like in that aspect?
Oh, gosh, there's so much that he's taught me. Through that Rattle series, I even started going to the women's retreat, which I was one of those women. I'm like, I'm never going to a women's retreat. But
and that last women's retreat, that was another huge.
Oh yes, that was huge because
leading up to it was just so much turmoil.
Yeah, I had a lot of turmoil in my personal life going on, and she had asked me if I wanted to help lead worship at the women's retreat, and I was like, sure, But yeah, I had so much going on. So I remember that I got there early to do rehearsal and stuff, and I was just not in a good place.
Yeah.
Like I was in tears, and I'm like, I can't do this, and she had to have a little come to Jesus talk with me because she's like, but it was good. I mean, that's what I love about our friendship is like she can be honest with me. She speaks the truth in love.
Victoria's not honest with people.
Yeah.
No.
And it might not be the most comfortable conversation, but I know that she loves me and she cares about me and that she has my best interest. So I listen.
That's what
and
I wanted her on here.
I take it to heart, but she's my security blanket.
Yeah, no, I love that.
No, but
Ditto as well.
But yeah, so she told me like you need to let this stuff go. She goes, I'm afraid that you're going to miss out on what God has for you this weekend because you're so caught up in your head.
That's a word. Yeah,
and it was true. And it took a few hours, but by the time we had to actually get up and do worship that night for the first session, it was like all of a sudden it was just all that stuff was gone. And yeah,
It was unbelievable.
I led, and it was cool. It was the coolest weekend.
It's awesome.
It was.
Yeah, and then the following weekend, that was the first weekend that I had to lead church by myself, lead, because the worship leader who was up there, you know, she had to step down, and I think you were gone that weekend. You're like, I'd do it, but I'm not going to be there, and I was already scheduled to sing, you know, backup vocals, and
I remember.
Yeah, so I get a text on Friday, and it's like, so don't panic, but
that's how I start all my texts.
Awesome.
But you have to lead, and
good.
I was terrified. You know, I'm like, I don't want to do this. You know, and I'm like, but I do, but I don't. You know, and that was part of like the saying yes to God is like we had talked, and I'm like, I don't want to say no because I'm scared.
Right.
You know,
but it was like I don't think when you look at it, and we look at it's one of our favorite worship songs. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe you're going to do it again. And so as you were that weekend, I think if it had happened before the women's retreat, I'm not sure, do you know what I mean? But you were kind of having a callback in your mind to the women's retreat, where if I don't do this, I might miss something that God has for me. If I don't get out of my own head and say yes and push the fear back, I might miss something he has for me. And I feel like the women's retreat, because we didn't know that was going to happen the week after, it was completely unexpected. And it's like, I feel like he, like you said, he kind of gently, or not so gently, but he did pave the way for it. He knew what was coming, but I think you had to do your part during the women's retreat, which was you saying, okay, I'm going to get out of my head. I don't want to miss what he has for me. And what he had for you was, I think, setting you up for that following weekend when you led like the whole thing.
It's awesome.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
I remember I was backstage, you know, waiting to go on, and I was praying so hard because I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I cannot do this on my own. And I just prayed and prayed, and I got out there and I opened my mouth, and I have never sang like that before, like never in my life. And I was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, that's cool. I love it.
But yeah, so
because it wasn't you. When you say I can't do this, it's like, no, you can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're
it's
correct.
a good place to be.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, that's I guess the overarching theme, I guess, is just giving your yes to God, even when it's not comfortable or when it's really hard. I mean, I don't like being on stage in front of people. You know, it's not comfortable for me. And people think that because I'm up there, I'm an extrovert, and oh, surely you must like me. I'm like, no, like I love to worship, and I feel like it's my calling to worship, but I'm like, I don't like being up in front of people. I'd rather lead from the green room, you know?
I think, a lot of our team actually are quite introverted.
Yeah. But it's like,
You just sounded so British when you said that. That was the most British sounding you said. That's got to go as a clip, Lily, so people know.
Carry on.
Cultured around here.
But yeah, I just, you know, I know that a lot of people struggle with anxiety and feeling just not good enough and all that stuff. And I just want people to know that, like, it doesn't matter how you feel, because like that's not how God sees you, you know? And it's like,
good.
It's okay to be shy.
It is
and
okay.
Be a quieter person in general.
Yeah. Because that's the other thing. I always felt like I had to be more outgoing. Like there's something wrong with me because I'm shy. And it's not. I mean, that's just my personality. But awesome. God can still use that, you know, as long as you're willing to say yes.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Love that. Thank you so much for coming, being a part of the podcast today. I think there's a lot that we can learn and glean from your story, whether it be just holding tightly to your convictions. For some people listening to this, it's maybe getting to a place of knowing what your convictions are. But I think at the end of the day, just realizing like your yes is so much more valuable than your comfort, than your anything else. Like in
fears.
And the times. I think that's something that we. Like I see in your story, is like sometimes if the enemy can't get you to detour from your convictions, maybe he can distract you, and using fear or whatever it is to distract you from the things that maybe God has for you. But I love that you're just like eyes fixed on Jesus, saying yes. There's a lot to learn and to be gleaned from that. So Tab family, we're going to leave you with it. And I would challenge you this week, where's somewhere maybe that God's asking you to take a step to say yes to him, that maybe you're scared. I'd encourage you to talk to somebody about it, or just say yes and let him be God and you not be God for a minute. So Kelly, thank you. Victoria, thank you so much. Benji, you did all right. Tab family, make sure you like, subscribe, share these episodes, whether it be on Facebook. Kelly would love, her picture's going to be on this.
Oh,
she would love if you just shared this and put it all over the internet. If this could just be our most viewed episode, it would make Kelly so happy.
So happy.
Yeah, we for sure want it to be more shared than Tackas's. So, Tab family, until next time, we appreciate y'all. This is Benji, Victoria, Kelly, and me, Britton, signing off.